Hi friend, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new to this channel, my name is Dr. Kevin Mutore, and I'm here to share something pretty personal. Over the past month and a half, I've embarked on a weight loss journey that's completely transformed my life. I've been able to lose 20 pounds, and I know how challenging it can be to find the motivation, and not only the motivation, the right information when you're embarking on a weight loss journey. And that's why I wanted to make this video. But before I dive in, I want to say this is not medical advice. It's just for educational purposes only. Make sure to consult your healthcare practitioner before starting any new medication or any new diet or exercise program. So this video is not to brag about losing weight. I know in my own up and down journey, I would always come to YouTube and check out videos of people, the same type of video where people would say, hey, this is how I lost weight. And I always found them so inspirational. And to be able to turn around and share that information is something that I truly value. And if you're on your own weight loss journey and you've lost some weight, please leave a comment below telling me how much weight you've lost, because I always find those super inspirational. Before we figure out how I lost this weight, let's talk about how I even got here. So senior year of high school, I was 172 pounds, 6'4", playing varsity basketball. Definitely not where I wanted to be strength-wise, but I was definitely healthy. But after I graduated high school, I decided to take a year off and work so I could pay for college. I didn't really have scholarships or anything to go to college, so I decided to take that route. So I was working anywhere from 60 to 80 hours a week, and the only thing that made me happy during that time was going to the gym. So I was working out 6 times a week. And at that point in time, I really got into the bodybuilding community. So I was doing everything like weighing my food, counting calories, making sure I was hitting my macros, like my protein intake and my carbohydrate intake based off of my weight. And I saw really good results. So after a year of doing this, I went from about 170 pounds to about 200 to 210 pounds, and I looked great, and more importantly, I felt great at this time. I was a lot stronger than I was back in high school, and I definitely got better at the game of basketball just from gaining strength. I remember I entered like a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and we were able to win our division. Still have that medal somewhere. It was really good because it was just a testament of all the hard work that I put in, and I don't even know if I'm going to include this in the final video, but one of the players at the time was some kid that I played against in middle school that was always so much better than me, and we were about the same height at the time, but I outgrew him, and now I was a lot stronger, and I was able to score a lot more points than him in this final game. So it was definitely a good time in my life. So I started college, and instead of gaining the freshman 15, I gained the freshman 50 almost, it felt like. And so I ballooned up from 200 to about 220 to 230 pounds. Because I didn't really have such a strict regimented schedule, and I couldn't put my all into tracking everything because I had, classes now, I had social relationships that I was trying to build at the time, and I had volunteering and other things that I was interested in, and exercise sort of fell off and wasn't as important to me. I still played basketball because I had friends that were playing basketball, and I always played intramural basketball, but I wasn't on sort of 3 to 6 times a week schedule where I was working specific body parts, because I think I may have been burnt out at the time. So the weight slowly just crept up, but since I'm 6'4", even at 230 pounds, I didn't really think much of it. Another thing that sort of led me to eating bad and gaining the weight was the money had sort of started running out during my second semester, and I realized that I'd have to kind of go back to work, and I didn't want to sacrifice my grades while working, so I knew I'd take a little bit more time off to sort of rebuild up the funds. And it was kind of stressful to know that I would have to go back to work and sort of pause my schooling. Eventually I did decide that it was okay to have student loans, and I guess now I'm here drowning in student loan debt, but whatever. At the time I thought I could avoid it. So because of the stress of having to go back to work and not feeling like I was progressing in life, I would soothe myself with food. And I think It was at that time that I developed a weird relationship with food, food sort of as a soothing mechanism for me. Whenever I was stressed, when I was bored, I would just sort of eat just to kind of pass the time. So fast forward, I'm working again, many jobs, but this time, I was definitely more interested in just enjoying myself and just enjoying my 20s, So from 220 to 230, I started slowly gaining more weight. And I remember one day I stepped on the scale and it showed 240, and I was like, oh my God, this is terrible, terrible. So, I did the sort of yo-yo dieting. I started doing like keto, Whole30, paleo. I went through a bunch of different things. I don't think I really tried juicing because it's not my thing because I'd be too hungry, but I considered it. Let's just say that if there's a diet out there, I thought about it, and I never really, like, I would lose, but it wouldn't stay off. So it's sort of like the prototypical yo-yo dieter and be like, oh, I'm all in, I'm all in, I'm all in. And then I would do something where I kind of fell off. Let's say I was keto and I had something that was sweet because, I have quite the sweet tooth. Once I would do that, I'd be like, oh my God, since this day is ruined, I might as well just enjoy the rest of the week or the rest of the month. And it'd be very hard for me to get back on after I fell off. So I'd often lose 10 pounds, gain 10 to 15 pounds back. And the cycle sort of continued, and I was never really able to get a control of that. So after I was done working, re-enrolled back into college. This time I was okay at getting student loans, which sort of helped. And, because I had set this goal to get into medical school that required I do extracurriculars and not just, do well in my classes. So, as the stress and the responsibility sort of grew, and exercise and eating right sort of kind of fell down in terms of importance on the totem pole. So started off at 200, went to 220, then, sort of junior year, I was hovering around 240. So after I graduated college, I didn't apply to med school initially. I ended up just working and, just falling into that sort of, adult life where you have responsibilities and you don't really, exercise isn't always the most important thing. So that continued, and the weight slowly just kept coming on. I was eating as much as I did in college. I wasn't exercising as much as I did back then. I wasn't playing basketball as much. And, 240 turned into 270. I remember the first time I stepped on that scale and it said 270. It was the same emotions that I felt when I first got to 240. And the same cycle of yo-yo dieting and fad diets began. Was able to lose weight for a little bit, and I was able to gain muscle for a little bit, and then I'd fall off and be back to the same old habits of binge eating and other different things, and wasn't able to kick the weight off. In 2017 is when I started medical school, and I remember telling myself that there's no way that I was going to take my white coat pictures at 270. So I was able to lose about 8 or 9 pounds at that time prior to starting medical school. And I was able to take my pictures. I think I was like 269, and I was like, whatever, I'll count that. But, it still wasn't focus of mine on health and exercise. Now, the first 2 years of medical school is when we basically learn everything in terms of like the language of medicine and just hit the books. So the first 2 years, you're not really doing clinical rotation. So you're not really in the hospitals or in outpatient clinics. You're just learning about the human body, what's normal, what's not normal, what causes disease, how different medications work. And it's a very stressful time. Medical school has kind of been compared to drinking from a fire hose. So imagine trying to learn as much as you can from this gush of information being thrown at you and just doing the best that you can. It was a very stressful period in my time, and that's when once again I started using food as a coping mechanism. Whenever I was stressed, whenever there was exams, that sweet tooth would start up, and I would just binge on sweet foods just to get that dopamine hit because it just made me feel better temporarily, and helped me manage stress a little bit better. And I don't know what made me do it. One day I decided to sort of step on the scale because, it's cyclical. Oh, I haven't worked out in a while. Let me get back on this. And I saw a number over 290 pounds. And it's kind of hard talking about it, but you have to realize, like, I'm a medical student. I'm going to be a doctor. I see the effects of what obesity does in terms of, like, high blood pressure, diabetes, kidney disease, heart disease, stroke. I read about it, I'm learning about it, I'm getting tested on it every single day. And here I am, not in control of my eating habits and my exercise habits. And I'm nearly 300 pounds. When I tell you that I was filled with shame, guilt, I had a lot of negative emotions at the time, negative self-talk. It was really definitely a weird period in my life. Thankfully, though, this was towards the end of my second year. And at the end of your second year, you take this big board exam, the first of three that you take in order to be a licensed physician. And because of we get dedicated study time at that time, which was about 8 weeks. So that means that I didn't have classes, and all I had to do every day was study for about 10 to 12 hours a day, which sucked. So in the morning, I'd go on campus and I'd study for about 8 hours, but I decided to sort of cut the day with some form of exercise. At the time, I downloaded the Couch to 5K app, and I started doing that. And on the days where I didn't have to run, I would either lift weights or I would play basketball. And it would help not only revitalize me, it would just be a change of pace before I had to go back home and study for 5 more hours. So I did that for a couple of months, and I was able to get down from the 290s back to the 270s, which was my set point. And another big motivating factor was after that test, I would start my third year of medical school, which is where you start going to clinics, start talking to patients, start being in the hospital. So I didn't want to be counseling patients about weight loss, diet, and exercise and feel like a hypocrite. So that was another motivating factor for me. So by the time third year rolled around, I think I was less than the 270s. I'd gotten down to maybe the 250s by the fall. And, I was on my way. I was doing great. I was full of energy, full of life. And I just kept exercising whenever I could, fitting it in with my busy schedule. And at this time I had, rotations where I was working 80 hours a week, or some rotations where I was working a little bit less, but I was very consistent with my dieting and exercise. And I had actually discovered intermittent fasting at that time, which is like one of the big things that has helped me. Now, the intermittent fasting, which is basically a fancy way of saying skipping breakfast for millennials, is eye-opening, not because like you're losing weight by restricting your eating window. I think what's really important, not a lot of people talk about, is how it sort of like reprograms the way you view food. You realize that hunger is not really like always physiological, as in like you're actually hungry and your body needs food. Sometimes it's psychological. Like, I don't know if you've ever said, I eat at lunchtime every day is when I eat. And one day you decide to have a snack at, like, let's say 11:30, but you usually eat at noon, and by noon you feel hungry even though you're not, for sure you're not actually hungry. It's kind of like that. I feel like with food sometimes we just get in certain habits. Oh, when I go to the grocery store, I always eat a bag of chips on the way home or something like that. And you get into these routines where you're not really listening to your body. And intermittent fasting was the first time I actually realized that it's okay to be A, hungry, and B, your body is able to tell you if you really pay attention to your cues when you're actually hungry, and you can sort of respond to that. Like even back when I was, lifting 6 times a week, I was eating 6 to 7 meals a day, so I never really felt hungry. And, when you're eating junk food, that food keeps you full for a long time. So I never really had to deal with, hunger in any sort of level. But, that intermittent fasting sort of opened my eyes up to that. And if you're getting any value from this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, helps the YouTube algorithm know that there's like-minded people who really care about health and wellness. Also, if you're still here at this point of the video, thank you so much. I know I'm rambly. This is more like a podcast sort of like vent session more than structured scripted video. So I appreciate y'all sticking with me till this point. But anyways, so third year, by January, everything's going good. I think I got into the 230s by January, but at this time is when we started having rumblings of a respiratory illness. And by March, everything sort of shut down and the pandemic began. Now, at this point in time, it was a difficult period for a lot of people, and I don't want to minimize anybody else's experience or make it sound like my experience was any worse. There are people who lost loved ones. I have a lot of colleagues that still to this day feel some level of PTSD from what happened, from taking care of patients with this new illness that no one really knew a lot about at the time, seeing all of those people die. And, I even had colleagues that required double lung transplant, which is, there are a lot of people that suffered. So like in the grand scheme of things, my experience was not as trying as that, but it is my experience nonetheless, so I will share it. So in March, when everything sort of shut down, as a medical student, I didn't have the skills nor the knowledge to help. So we were taken out because there was a PPE shortage at the time, and essentially everything just transitioned to online, and we were by ourselves. So it was the first time that I actually realized how social of a being I was, or how extroverted I was, because not being around people was definitely hard. At the time, there was a lot of social unrest and a lot of social things happening that affected people that looked like me, that just added on to the stress of the situation. So early on, I was able to, sort of modify my thing. Instead of going to the gym, I got resistance bands that I started trying to do, and I started running again, which was good. And I just remember one day I went out before my online rotation started, ran 5 miles, took me just above an hour, and walked home, and I just said, I'm done. I don't even know why I'm doing. I don't know when things are opening up. We're just sitting here at home. Bad things are happening in the world. I have no control over them. I can't even help, even though, in the medical field, it was just a lot of emotions at the time. So I just stopped exercising, and I did what, soothed me at the time, which was eating. And it was not even eating to eat. It was like binging. I would get 2 different breakfasts from 2 different drive-thrus just to make me get that dopamine rush and sort of soothe me during this stressful time. And I went from 230, and remember, it took months and months of hard work, dedication, and, moving in the right direction, and ballooned up to 260 in just a matter of months. And I remember stepping back on the scale and feeling those same feelings of shame, guilt, just negative emotions at the time. And, I sort of did the yo-yo thing again, and ended up finishing med school probably around 270 pounds, which is where I started this whole thing 4 years prior. So I started residency, and before residency, it was kind of the same thing. I don't want to weigh in at 270. So I started working out. Unfortunately, I got injured, but I think I got myself down from like the high 270s to a high 260s. But yeah, residency is a whole different beast. You're working 80 to 100 hours a week, 24-hour shifts at times, every 3 days. And in terms of preparing meals and all of that, that was not really an option. And when you're stressed, tired, and you have little time for yourself, and your triggers are stress and fatigue for binge eating and eating poorly, it's just a recipe for disaster. So, fast forward to January 1st of this year, I step on the scale and I'm back in the 290s, and I make the decision, you know what? It's time to make a change. Let's do the New Year's resolution thing. Took about a week, I was off the wagon, but in January is kind of when I decided for real to make a change. So let's talk about the decision. What makes me feel like this time is different is I started watching this video podcast on YouTube called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And it's essentially this personal finance sort of budgeting podcast where the host Ramit Sethi talks to couples about their finances. And, there's one episode where this guy's got like a bunch of millions in the bank, but he drives around town trying to find gas stations with the lowest price so he can save a couple of cents on gas. And it's so bad that his wife was like, I'm thinking about leaving you because you were so cheap. And you have other people on the other end of the spectrum that are crazy in debt, that are constantly spending, swiping their credit cards. And Ramit kind of breaks it down where he asks them questions about how they grew up, their relationship with money, their parents' relationships with money, whether they grew up poor, rich. All of this sort of comes together to sort of make these interesting stories. And I definitely recommend anybody check it out because it made me really hone in on my personal finances as well. But I quickly realized that it was not about the numbers, right? So it wasn't about how much somebody made or how much they had in their bank. It was really all of these things and all of these stories that people told themselves or all of these experiences that they had in childhood, or where maybe their dad gambled away money, so they have to have savings in order to feel safe. So it sort of disconnected people's actions from actual factual reality. It's just all about psychology. So this psychology of money, I don't know what happened, but I had this light bulb moment where I realized it's not knowledge that I lacked with food. I mean, I'm a physician. Even though nutrition isn't really covered, I've done the whole bodybuilding thing. I've done a bunch of fad diets. I know my body, so I know how to eat right. I know what good food is. I know what portions are. I know all of this information, but I was never able to do it long term. And I realized it's because I'd never really addressed my mindset or my psychology when it came to food. So at the end of January and early February, I decided to dive in and really read about all of the science behind the psychology of weight loss, the food behaviors, and things of that nature. And I made the decision on February 1st that I would start losing weight and that I would jump on this journey. It wasn't really a weight loss journey, it was a health journey. That's sort of how I framed it in my mind. And as I was reading and gaining knowledge, interestingly enough, in the first 2 weeks of February, I started losing weight without actually trying. I just made a few tweaks here or there where instead of saying, oh, it's time for me to eat, I'd be like, am I hungry right now? If I really felt hungry, then I would eat. I didn't care. At that point, I wasn't trying to eat a certain specific diet. I would just eat whatever, right? And as I learned more, I realized that there was things that science pointed to that made you more likely to lose weight. And I'll probably make a video about everything that I learned. If people are interested in that, please let me know in the comments below. But there's certain things that are predictive of losing weight. So 2 weeks in, check my weight again. I've lost a little bit of weight and I'm like, okay, this is really cool. But I decided to, start really honing in on my diet a little bit more. So, I decided to eat more whole foods, trying to go lower on the carbohydrate intake. I know there's a lot of debate over that, but intuitively that makes more sense to me. It works better for my body. I just feel better when I eat a little bit less carbs. Even though I have a sweet tooth, I just feel better when I'm eating a little bit less sugar. And I decided to start training for a 10K. So that's basically what I've been doing. There's a little bit more to it, and I can go into details if people are a little bit more interested in that. But that's what I started doing, and the weight just started coming off. And the funny thing is, I really struggle with this all or nothing mentality. And since I've had this sort of light bulb moment or this shift, everything has been a little bit easier. And, I've even been able to go out on St. Patrick's Day. I went out with my wife and some friends. We enjoyed the day, ate whatever I wanted. And I wasn't, I didn't fall back to, hey, I'm off this thing now, I can do whatever, and just fall off the wagon. No, it was just like, hey, it's just a little blip on this long journey, and it doesn't really matter. And what's weird though is, even though back in the day or before I would notice, I knew that my weight would go up, and it's water weight. It's not actual real weight. It's just whenever you start taking in more carbs and sodium, your weight will go up because you're retaining more water. That's not real weight, right? So like people who say that they lost 10 pounds in the first week, most of that is water weight. So it's not like quote unquote real weight. But even though in the past I knew that, that would be enough of a trigger for me to just start binge eating, which is completely ridiculous if you think about it, because I know it's not real weight and I'll fall off by just going back to what I was doing prior. But I wasn't approaching this with a sense of compassion, A, for myself or my body, or a sense of this is being a long term. It was like, oh, I need to lose so many pounds by this date, even though it took years for this weight to come on, I needed to have it off in like 3 months, which is completely ridiculous when you really sit back and think about it. So yeah, my birthday was also in March, and guess what? Went to a nice steakhouse, had some steak, also had some mac and cheese, had some green beans, had all the fixings, had dessert at the end, and my weight went slightly up. And guess what? After a few days, it went back down. So it's like, I really, really feel good. In full disclosure, I'm even less than 20 pounds right now, but obviously I'm recording this a little bit later because, you know, your boy's working and stuff. But I'm feeling good and just sort of taking a long-term approach. Oh, another thing that I did, I said, you know what? I'm just trying to lose 5 pounds each month. So that's approximately 1.25 pounds per week, which is completely doable. And I know that even now I'm definitely above that. But my goal is just 5 pounds a month. So 292 in February to 287, 287 to 282 in March, 282 to 277 in April, 277 to 272 in May, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just trying to show y'all I can do math, but just these slow, gradual weight loss is the way to do it, and it's got to be sustainable changes. I haven't really done much outside of running 3 times a week, just trying to train for this 10K. I thought I'd be lifting more, but my schedule's just too crazy, and I don't have to go to the gym to run. So, you know, things are definitely good for me, and I'm excited. And of course, it wasn't like smooth sailing this whole month and a half. There were times where it was like a little bit harder. I'd get cravings, but you know, it was very important for me to just ask myself, do I really want this right now? Am I really hungry? That was the main question I would ask myself. Am I actually hungry? And if I wasn't, or if I was feeling stressed, and I'd be like, oh, I'm feeling stressed, therefore I'm craving this sweet thing. It's not really the sweet thing that I want. It's some sort of mental release from this stressor that I'm feeling. And you know, like that has been life-changing for me and has been great because I've been able to. I feel like I'm going to be consistent with this, and I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I've definitely reduced the negative self-talk that I have whenever I gain a little bit of weight or I don't go exercise. Just say, hey, you know what? You missed a day. We can get back at it today, and it's been really helpful. I don't know if anyone's been through something like this, but I know it's been super helpful for me. Hopefully me talking about my journey has been inspiring and will help you get off the couch. This is my main reason for filming this. And like I said, if you're on your own weight loss journey, make sure to comment below. I love these comments. I know they're great on other people's videos. So if I'm able to inspire somebody, I would love for you to let me know that happened. Now, if you're thinking about losing weight, make sure to grab my 4-step checklist in the description box below that goes over the 4 steps that I use to lose 20 pounds in 52 days. Now keep in mind that this is for people who are at the point in their weight loss journey where they're not looking for a quick fix. If you had shown me this about 5 years ago, I would have been like, no, I want to do this fad diet or this fad diet. Now that I'm looking at this from a different angle where I'm examining my relationship with food and I'm trying to do things to extend my life and live a healthy life, I'm now ready to follow these steps, which I've outlined in that simple to follow checklist that have really revolutionized the way I look at food and my weight loss. And I lost 20 pounds and I don't even feel like I did all that much. I don't feel restricted and I just feel really good. So like I said, make sure you grab that checklist in the description box below. Now, I don't even know how to finish this video. Like I said, this was like a venting type video. I hope I can edit it to make it somewhat okay. You know, I'll end with this. I know some of you might have some questions about specific things that I did diet-wise or exercise-wise. And if you have those questions, make sure to drop them down in the comments below. But like I said, this video is more about empowering people to start looking at food differently and start exercising and eating right and living the life that they want. And hopefully I can be part of that YouTube how I lost 20 pounds video gang that really gets people inspired. So with that, I'll let you guys go. Oh, and also I'm sure I'll link a video up here that goes over some wonderful health thing. But like I said, y'all can do it. I'm excited that I'm doing it, and I'm excited to share my journey with you and build a community with y'all. And y'all keep me motivated. I'm getting comments on my YouTube videos, and y'all are amazing. Thank you. Bye.